geophone module. Can't imagine.
5 EVA. Go ahead.
Try your moon rock. I actually, when I got the moon rock, it came with a complete, the composition of the rock, then the analysis is right there. So it's mostly olivine, it's got some silica, it's got some other like volcanic rock in it. It's really like a mishmash of little bits of all kinds of different rocks, and it's like 60% olivine. It's interesting because it is basically a chunk of the moon's crust, outer crust. It really does show how the moon was formed, because unlike the Earth, the moon never had weather. So when the moon cooled, it basically was just frozen in time. So the rocks of its crust, they've been pummeled, but sort of like sand on the beach, it's a remnant of the whole. So that chunk of moon rock that I have, it sort of really represents like what the moon is made of. It's basically just like the whole moon is a big rock that is just gravitationally compressed out of trillions of trillions of trillions of tiny little stones that came from that massive impact that formed the moon. But yeah, I love the moon rock. It's just so fascinating to look at, especially under magnification, because like I said, it's not like anything that you'd see in an Earth rock. It's not even like certain rocks like granite, or it's different. It's just like that moon rock. It's just like a lot of different kinds of rock that just don't belong next to each other. It's like compressed rock trash. It's like you take two protoplanets, you smash them together, and all the junk that comes out, you just kind of like take all that, you coalesce it, you just compress it like in a big garbage compactor, and that's what you get, like forever. Office Fart says moon regolith is jagged and sharp compared to sand. Well, yeah, because there's no weather on the moon. So also all of the places where the Apollo landings happened near the Mara, which is volcanic overflow, which happened billions of years ago. But that volcanic rock is basically glass. And so that volcanic glass rock is then pummeled by meteorites and micrometeorites for billions of years. And so yeah, in the areas where the Apollo landings happened, that regolith is basically it's glass powder, And the astronauts, especially the later missions, when they were out for days and days, and like the EVA suits got coated and coated and coated, and they had to wear those suits inside too. It's like there was no changing room. That's the people have to appreciate. Once they got like the suits all covered in regolith, and that stuff was also ionized, so it had an ionic attraction to everything. So it would just they'd kick up a dust plume, and it would just go, and it would just stick to the suit. The outer valence electrons are getting stripped out of everything that's exposed to the space environment with the sun and the ionization and everything. So it's all like really sticky, gooey stuff. There was no changing room, so when they came back into the LEM, closed the door, pressurized the cabin, well, now they're in very, very low gravity, and that regolith is freaking everywhere. It's in the air, and it got in their eyes, and they breathed it in, and it was just, they said it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I don't know if they gave them like eye drops, like and stuff to like wash out their eyes and everything. I don't know how good the air filtration was in the LEMs to get rid of the regolith, and the fact that they had to wear those suits and sleep in those suits and everything. Every time they moved around, they'd kick up more of it. Oh, it's just, I can't even imagine. But here's an interesting corollary. I got an email some time ago, a month, 2 months ago. There was this group for the Scientific Journal. they were doing a research paper, and it's off the top of my head. I'm not going to name names because I wouldn't remember anyway, but they told me who they were in the research paper that there was this journal, and they had were doing an article about, in fact, they had examined footage, the video and film shot on the moon through a number of Apollo landings, especially like with the buggy and stuff. Because when they're driving the buggy around, they're kicking up the lunar regolith, and so the film and the video that was shot, you can see the rooster tails that are kicked up by the tires. And for decades, I have mentioned this before about people who think that the Apollo footage was hoax. It's like, it's so clearly in a vacuum because whenever they kick up the regolith, it falls like lead shot. It doesn't matter how fine it is. It goes up and vroom. It's up and down, up and down. There's nothing floating around on the ground. It's like no matter how fine the dust is, it just falls like a handful of lead shot. It's just, and when it lands, it's just, there's no bounce. It's just, and what they pointed out was they said that they've examined all this footage, the videotape and the film, and they've made compensation and everything for frame rates and all that. And they said that in all the calculations that they did, that the lunar regolith was falling too fast, that the acceleration back down was faster than it should have been under the acceleration of lunar gravity. And they said that they were trying to, and they had shown me the calculations in the other room. The factor was like 20, it was like a 20%, it was like 20% too fast. That the regolith was falling too fast. And I point out to them, I said, I don't know if you took into consideration the transfer rates and everything, because the S-band transmitted video was at a different frame rate and everything. They had to convert it to NTSC, and then the NTSC, the recordings we have are at 29.95, and I said, the conversions and everything, and the way that they converted the received video to NTSC was that they had to use a special monitor that had high memory phosphor in it, because basically, like an oscilloscope, the phosphor had to keep the image on a little longer because so that there wouldn't be any flicker, and the changing from the very slow, out of synchronized frame rate up to 60 fields a second, 30 frames, 60 fields. And I explained all that, and they said, well, we did all those calculations, but it's still 20% too fast. I said, the only thing that I can think of is that you have to take into consideration the regolith itself. I said, everything on the surface of the moon has been exposed to the sun for billions of years, at least millions of years, because, as impacts happen, it gets kicked around and stuff, micrometeoroids and everything. But it's all been exposed to the sun, ultraviolet, X-rays, high Z particles. It's all extremely ionized. So everything that's exposed on the surface, it's basically, stripped of electrons. So it's got to be really, really sticky stuff. And I said the astronauts always complained that if they kicked up the regolith, it would stick to everything. It stuck to the camera lenses, it stuck to the rover, it stuck to their suits, it stuck to their tools. It got on their visors, on their hands. They couldn't keep it off of anything. Once it got up off of the surface, it would just stick and attach. And I said, so you got to understand, if it's that ionized, then there's got to be a field, an electrical field, on the lunar surface created by this ionization. And so when you kick up the regolith, if it doesn't get high enough to escape the field, that it's going to be basically electrostatically attracted. Just like if you had a balloon that you had gotten a big static charge to, and then you're gonna hold a feather here and let it go, just get attracted to the balloon, it's not even gonna fall. Well, imagine the surface of the moon just being like one big charged balloon, and that regolith being starved of electrons. It's just gonna be attracted back down to the ground. And so I said, well, taking in consideration that there is a field, electrical field, that the regolith is in, that it's being attracted, it's being basically pulled down to the ground by this electrical field, static electrical field, in addition to the acceleration due to gravity. And I said that would probably account for at least your 20%. And I said that rate of acceleration would change with distance. So, you know, the higher, I mean, obviously the astronauts didn't have like a 500-foot high tower to get up into to drop some regolith and see if it sped up so that it was like traveling at a higher rate of acceleration the closer it got to the surface, but that's what I would expect to see. But it was an interesting question, and it made me think about an interesting answer. And I had never really read anything about anything, people talking about electrical fields or static charges on the lunar surface. It's just not anything that I ever read. But I think that with an interesting observation, if it's true that regolith was being attracted to the surface faster than the acceleration of gravity, then it would have to be a field effect. And again, because there's no air on the moon, in a vacuum, those forces would be a lot stronger and a lot faster, and they would have influence at a much greater distance. Basically, the moon, you're talking about, you're inside of a vacuum tube. Imagine how charges move inside of a CRT, for example. You know, you've got the highly charged anode on the front, you got the cathode in the back, and electrons are just zipping through the tube. Well, imagine a planet-sized rock that's really, really, really ionized. There's got to be some really strong fields, especially when you're on the surface. Which makes me realize too, you know, there's got to be some effects too. Those are interesting experiments that you'd want to take to the moon to measure electrical fields and really measure static fields, charges. Could even be a source of actually creating electricity if you had a way of harnessing that. But anyway, it was an interesting conversation. I didn't hear back from them. I don't know if they poo-pooed my ideas or what, but I thought it was an interesting thing that needed more qualified people than than me to think about it. That was my hypothesis. But my last bit on the moon thing is about going back to the moon and even going to Mars is the regolith problem. It's like I hadn't heard anything, hadn't read anything about how any of these companies were going to deal with the regolith, because it just seems like they're just going to go up there with spacesuits and airlocks and walk around and everything. It's like, well, you know, Apollo 16, 17 were really pushing the limits of it. Is like if you're up there for any length of time, even like days, the regolith becomes a real problem. How are you dealing with it? Like if you're going to have a moon base and you're going to be outside all the time, how are you going to keep that stuff out of your environment? How are you going to clean it off of yourself? You know? You got special space vacuums to vacuum off your suits and everything before you like get out of the airlock. And even with the best protocols, you know, if you're up there all the time doing EVAs every day, you're just going to end up with regolith and everything. And, boy. And if you go to Mars, it's even more of a problem because by all accounts, it seems that Martian regolith is pretty toxic to people. Not only wouldn't you want to get it inside, you wouldn't want to be breathing it at all. The health problems would really start to add up if you were in a position where you're breathing regolith every day, lunar or Martian. So yeah.
In the lab. That's where I work. berserk. In my lab, it's where I work.
How's Pee-wee? I don't know. How you doing today, Pee-wee? Ah, what you got to say? Ah, it's Pee-wee Herman. Oh, look, there you are, but what am I? You are Pee-wee Herman. One more. I know where you are, but what am I? Oh! Ah!
Working at the bench
Ah!
again.
Don't fall. Ah.
I'm Fran.